Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 10th alumni panel in our Fulbright Impact in the Field series. We launched this series as a way to engage and highlight our outstanding Fulbright alumni at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our aim with these panels is to allow Fulbrighters and the general public to learn more about our Fulbrighters' stories as they continue to make a positive impact on their local and global communities. We will hear directly from our alumni about the key roles they play in these communities and how they work to contribute to solving complex global problems such as public diplomacy. Our past panels have examined how the pandemic has affected healthcare, education and international exchanges, and nursing. Other impact panels have discussed the global struggle for racial justice, disability rights, accessibility, and inclusion, as well as climate change. Before we begin today's panel, I want to make a few brief comments on the Fulbright program for those of you who are interacting with Fulbright for the first time. The Fulbright program, the flagship international educational exchange program sponsored by the United States government, has fostered mutual understanding between citizens of the United States and other countries for 75 years. Indeed, this year, 2021, marks the 75th anniversary of the Fulbright program. Events and activities are taking place across the globe throughout this year to celebrate. We have launched a website to serve as the digital hub for this anniversary. We invite you to visit Fulbright75.org to find stories about Fulbright alumni who are making an impact, watch our anniversary video, catch up with Fulbright news, and check out a calendar of activities and events so that you can also join in the celebration. The Fulbright program is funded by an annual appropriation from the United States Congress to the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, or ECA, as well as contributions from partner governments and others. Several nonprofit organizations administer components of the program on behalf of ECA, including the Institute of International Education, and we thank them very much for organizing this panel today. Since the Fulbright program began in 1946, over 400,000 Fulbrighters of all backgrounds from the United States and other countries across the world have participated in the program. And we are pleased to be joined by our group of alumni here on this panel today. My name is E.J. Monster, and I am a member of the United States Foreign Service as a public diplomacy officer. I currently serve in the office of the Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs as a planning officer. I joined the United States Foreign Service in 2002 after completing a Fulbright English Teaching Assistantship in Ghent, Belgium. I have served overseas at our US embassies in Bolivia, Kenya, Malawi, Poland, and South Africa. And in 3 of those countries, I had the great honor to manage the Fulbright program. Before I introduce the other panelists today, I'm pleased to present remarks from Ambassador Thomas R. Pickering, a retired US diplomat and 7-time ambassador. Ambassador Pickering served in the Foreign Service for 4 decades and was the United States ambassador in Russia, India, Israel, El Salvador, Nigeria, and Jordan, as well as the United Nations. He served as Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs from 1997 until 2000, and he holds the rank of Career Ambassador, the highest rank in the United States Foreign Service. And he was also a Fulbright US student participant to Australia in 1954, where he received a second master's degree at the University of Melbourne. In his remarks that we're about to watch, Ambassador Pickering will discuss his experiences as a Fulbrighter in Australia and his thoughts on how the Fulbright program impacts diplomacy in the United States and around the world. He will also discuss the Pickering Fellowship, which prepares outstanding young people from underrepresented backgrounds for careers in the United States Foreign Service, and how these opportunities and opportunities for international exchange are crucial to the future of foreign relations.
Well, I think that it is fair to say that the Fulbright program has improved the opportunity for many who wish to become Foreign Service officers to know and understand something about at least a foreign country, if not a foreign country in a regional context, to do better with the language of that country, to know and understand its people and how they think, to bring themselves up to date on the problems facing those countries, to understand the paths of solutions for those problems, and to make a contribution while they are actually living and working overseas, in effect, to the relationship between the United States and those countries. Not all good foreign relations are captive of American diplomats. Ordinary Americans, whoever they are, wherever they travel and however they meet people, are always looked at overseas as we look at representatives of countries who visit us for clues about how they behave, how they think, what is their sense of America, and what is our sense of their country, and how and in what way can we improve that relationship. Diplomacy, a field that I have followed, is 100% a people subject. It's 100% personal relationships. It is, in many ways, the building of those relationships that comes out of how we can improve our capacity to work with other countries. And over the years, many of the people I've met, I have understood how, in fact, to build that relationship in large measure from my early Fulbright experience in Australia. The Fulbright program's impacted my career in two major ways. One, contributing very much to the interest I had in becoming a diplomat and serving the U.S. overseas by giving me an opportunity to live and work overseas and to get to know a number of people following much the same field in the same way. And secondly, to develop a body of knowledge for myself on how one foreign country, Australia, in its own way, developed over 100 years the knowledge, the capacity, the legal basis, and indeed the relationship with the colonial and then imperial power of independence, self-reliance, and a foreign policy of its own. The Pickering program at the State Department, named for me at the time I retired at the end of the year 2000, although I didn't discover that a program had been named for me until many months later, because I worked then for an American commercial firm, and under the conflict of interest rules of the State Department, could not have any contact with the State Department at all for a whole year. But I was extremely gratified. The program began years before it was named for me as a kind of State Department venture into an ROTC type program, primarily to find people who represented diverse backgrounds in America, to build the diversity of the American Foreign Service, something that was then truly lacking and still is. And the way in which it worked was simple. You applied for it, took exams, and so on. If you were accepted in it, you were given 3 years of undergraduate and graduate education by the State Department, and committed to both pass the examination to become a Foreign Service officer and then serve the United States for a minimum of at least 5 years as a Foreign Service officer. Large numbers have been taken in, and last year I was happy to see that the intake was increased 50% as American attention in and around the election and after it turned to the absolute need to improve our performance in the American government, in the State Department, and in the Foreign Service of including candidates from diverse origins, Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Pacific Americans, women, LGBTQ Americans. The Foreign Service is open. It needs these people. What's made the Fulbright program so important and its achievements so possible? One, I think it's the inspiration behind it, that exchanges of people and study in other countries' universities and teaching in other countries' universities is something that comes pretty naturally to most Americans. It is also the notion that study and research have no natural territorial or geographic boundaries. They are universal aspirations of humankind, and they make a difference in the lives of all. And what we can do to promote the general goodwill around the globe makes our planetary life and success much more significant.
So today's panelists make a difference through connecting peoples and nations as diplomats. Together, we will discuss how Fulbright impacts diplomacy and prepares one for success in a diplomatic career. So I will introduce the panelists. First up, we have Ambassador Michał Mlinar. He was a 1998 Fulbright Teacher Exchange Program from the Slovak Republic. Ambassador Mlinar has been the permanent representative of the Slovak Republic to the United Nations in New York since August 2017, and he is the Vice Chair of the United Nations Peace Building Commission for 2021. From 2015 until 2017, Ambassador Mlinar was Director General for International Organizations, Development Cooperation, and Humanitarian Aid at the Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs of the Slovak Republic. He has served as the Slovak Republic's ambassador in Nairobi, Kenya, chair of the Committee of Permanent Representatives to the UN Habitat, and as president of the 25th session of the UN Habitat Governing Council. Ambassador Mlinar holds a PhD and a master's degree in applied linguistics and teaching foreign languages from the Comenius University in Bratislava, Slovakia. In 1998, Ambassador Dr. Michał Mlinar attended University of California at Los Angeles as a Fulbright Teacher Exchange Program participant. Our next panelist is Ms. Kelly Whitson, who was a 2011 Fulbright English Teaching Assistant to Malaysia. Ms. Whitson joined the U.S. Department of State as a Foreign Service Officer in 2014 and currently serves as a Gender, Entrepreneurship, and Health Officer in the Bureau of African Affairs, Office of Economic Policy in Washington, D.C. Ms. Whitson previously worked as a staff assistant in the African Affairs Bureau, providing support to the Assistant Secretary, Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary, and the Deputy Assistant Secretaries. She has also completed overseas tours in Copenhagen, Denmark, and Monterrey, Mexico. Ms. Whitson holds a master's degree in international development from American University and a bachelor's degree in international studies from Spelman College. She speaks Spanish and Danish. As a 2011 Fulbright English Teaching Assistant, Ms. Whitson taught English to Malaysian students in Terengganu, Malaysia. Our next panel participant is Dr. Abir Jarar, who was a 2006 Fulbright foreign student from Jordan. Dr. Jarar is partner corporate M&A and capital markets at Baker & McKenzie Habib Al-Mula. She has over 18 years experience in the Middle East with a particular focus on equity capital markets. Having advised in recent years on some of the most complex and high-profile regional and international M&A transactions, Dr. Jarar combines a profound understanding of the legal environment and the distinct business culture of the Middle East and their interaction with international market practice. She was previously managing associate corporate M&A at Linklaters based in UAE and senior associate corporate M&A at Clifford Chance. She holds a higher diploma in diplomatic studies and negotiations, junior diplomats proficiency program from the Jordan Institute of Diplomacy in Jordan. From 2002 until 2006, she was third secretary consul with the Embassy of Jordan in Washington, D.C. As a 2006 Fulbright foreign student from Jordan, Dr. Gerard studied at Georgetown University, where she received a Doctor of Juridical Science degree. So now that I've introduced the panel, I would like to open it up to our discussion. I'll throw out the first question, and this will be for all panelists. Ambassador Pickering made some very insightful reflections and shared his own personal stories about how Fulbright impacts both national and people-to-people diplomacy. Would you please share your thoughts on his remarks and how you think the Fulbright program or international exchanges in general contributes to diplomacy? Ambassador Mlinar, we'll start with you.
Thanks very much, EJ. It's great to be here as part of this panel, and looking forward to engaging discussions. If I may, I would like to start with a short quote by Senator William Fulbright. In there, he actually referred to the Fulbright program's mission as to bring a little more knowledge, a little more reason, and a little more compassion into the world affairs, and thereby increase the chance that nations will learn at last to live in peace and friendship, end of quote. I really do believe that this quote accurately represents the essence of why we have also met here today. Through sharing our experience, we can acquire the critical ability to see the world as others see it, and allow for the possibility that others may see something we have failed to see. Only then we can truly begin to understand the world around us and start working on solving the problems we all face together as human beings. The Fulbright program itself really well represents the nature of public diplomacy, of all the forms of cultural exchanges that we experience and actively promote. We believe the educational exchange is the most important and productive one. Education allows for the expansion of human wisdom, empathy, and perception. Through education, we can better understand the diversity of our world and promote the idea that it is only through peaceful coexistence that we can live our lives in dignity and with care for one another. And of course, when I refer to education, it is very much related to my own personal experience being a teacher for more than 7 years before joining the world of diplomacy. We often hear that education aims to prepare one for life and give them the ability to understand the world with more knowledgeable views and opinions. And maybe I can expand a little bit on that thought. I believe that it is not only knowledge that is important, but it also is translating this acquired knowledge into concrete action. With more than 380,000 alumni worldwide, the Fulbright program really has promoted and fostered the ideals of valuable, constructive dialogue and mutual understanding. We then translate these essential principles into our everyday work and try to tackle the most pressing global issues, whether it's energy, sustainability, economic development, public health, very importantly now, or for food security. And this is where it leads me to the connection with my own work and my own career. Dialogue and mutual understanding is precisely what connects the Fulbright program and the Fulbright experience to the world of diplomacy and international relations. And it is also largely about communication, connecting with people, and empathy. And later I will be happy to say a bit more about the practical experience that I have in this regard. Thank you, EJ.
Thank you, Ambassador. Dr. Gerard?
Thank you, EJ. I appreciate the kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the Fulbright program and to be able to share with you my thoughts as a Fulbright alumna. Few words about Ambassador Pickering. He's known to be as an outstanding diplomat, a man of many talents. Throughout his career, he tried to reach out to other people, regardless of political affiliations or positions, and most importantly, made himself accessible. I think no American living diplomat is respected around the world, from the Far East to the Far West, including in my country, Jordan, more than him. And this is due to the unique attributes he has in interacting and understanding other cultures, which the Fulbright program is all about. I'm truly honored to be here today to share the same panel and learn from his experience and your experiences. Obviously, the Fulbright program is an effective instrument of public diplomacy. It is cultural diplomacy at its finest that ultimately brings people together through exchange of ideas, knowledge, art, language, and through understanding different cultures and respecting basic human rights. And I consider myself fortunate to have gone through that experience in my early years. EJ?
Thank you, Dr. Gerard. Kelly?
Yes, thank you, EJ, and thank you so much for the honor to speak with you all today. And I'm very delighted to be on this panel with such esteemed panelists. Thank you again. So I, reflecting on what Ambassador Pickering said, I think, he hit the nail on the head. Fulbright and other international exchange programs, they are such key parts to our diplomacy. And I agree with everything that my fellow panelists said, but if I could add one thing, it would be that it's also an opportunity to meet, real people from different countries. In my case, meeting from a real American, where some people don't have that opportunity, and to give them that experience to know that there are more similarities than there are differences, which I think is such a key part for promoting mutual understanding, which is something that we're all trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you to all three panelists. So our next question is, how did the Fulbright program impact your career trajectory? And for this one, we'll start off with Kelly.
So thank you, EJ. Thanks for the question. So for me, Fulbright was essentially the jumping off point for me. I went to my Fulbright ETA position in Malaysia, unsure about what I wanted to do with my career. And I had always known I was interested in international affairs and had heard about careers in diplomacy. But I wasn't sure if that's what I wanted to do. But about halfway through my time in Malaysia, it just hit me. It was the ultimate confirmation that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a diplomat. I wanted to live, work, and contribute overseas. So from there, I decided to apply for graduate school. I also applied to be a Rango Fellow, which is a similar program to the Pickering Fellowship that Ambassador Pickering mentioned. And then, a few years later, I joined the Foreign Service as an economic code officer. So it was the point in my life to get me to this point in my career.
Thank you, Kelly. Dr. Gerard?
Thank you. So I am today where I wanted to be 24 years ago. I am one of very few Arab women, in fact, women in general, who made partner in a major international law firm. And I believe that my Fulbright experience contributed significantly to where I am today. When I look back, my Fulbright experience was more of a journey. The most interesting part of it was preparing myself to win the grant. I applied 3 times for the Fulbright scholarship. I was so keen to further my education in the US and pursue a career in law, and my experience in foreign service helped me sharpen my skills and prepared me for the next phase, which was to get a doctorate degree in law from Georgetown University. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gerard. Persistence pays off.
Mm-hmm.
Ambassador Mlinar?
Thanks very much. And like my colleague, I also applied 3 times for the Fulbright program, and it is the 3rd time that I got it. Just like I applied 3 times for the Foreign Service, and it was the 3rd time that I got in. I don't know if it has any wider coincidence, maybe not any wider importance, or if it was just a coincidence. Maybe it's not important to dwell too much on those, but it does show, as we have just said, the persistence and the commitment that we need to show in these important endeavors. And like my colleagues already mentioned, my own Fulbright experience back in 98, 99 prepared me well for my subsequent diplomatic career, which I pursued shortly after the Fulbright year in LA, California. It motivated me again to go for the Foreign Service and literally ejected me in that direction. It helped me spread my wings, if you will, and fulfill the long-term ambition that I had. And how? Through providing the big opportunity and proving to myself that I can do it and that it works, and testing through the Fulbright experience, participating in events and gatherings, co-organizing them, being involved, being active, and really being committed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. So what advice do you have for those who want to pursue a career in diplomacy, or public diplomacy more specifically? What opportunities exist for those who want to break into a career as a diplomat? Ambassador, we'll start off with you.
Thanks very much. Yes, and it very much starts where I have just ended, that you need to be involved, active, you need to be focused, you need to be committed, and that's the best recipe that I can give to anybody to pursue similar careers or any other opportunities like that. Of course, this was in the pre-social media era, so to say, and now in many ways things are more intense, easier in some ways, but more difficult in others. So of course, through social media, a lot of information can be shared, and it is possible to connect to people more easily and to communicate with people. Of course, with some caveats about potentially fake news or misinformation. But the best advice, again, that I can give, especially to young people, is to engage at their universities and to really be at the watch out for any such opportunities. And Ambassador Pickering's fellowship is certainly one of them. And of course, also at the UN, there is a lot of other opportunities available, such as internships. And we have been pushing now for a lot more for young people in particular. And maybe I can say a bit more on those later if people are interested. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Dr. Gerard, any advice for people interested in pursuing a career in diplomacy?
Yeah, sure. I think you have to be open to understanding different points of view and other cultures. You cannot be one-dimensional. You need to have the ability to listen and respect those you engage with, even if you do not agree with their views or understand their culture. You need to have empathy, understanding, knowledge to gain your counterparty's respect. You need to realize that doing things in a certain way in your culture does not mean other cultures have to do it similarly, that people have different backgrounds, approaches, and outlooks. You need to be respectful of diversity, not just tolerate it, but to embrace it. In preparing for this session, I went back to my files and pulled out some notes that I took 17 years ago when I shadowed my mentor and former boss in Foreign Service. And they could not be more true. I had 10 of them, and I will share with you 3 of my favorites. Number 1, and that was something that paid off in later years when I pursued my career in law. You have to be a good listener and not let your own views undermine your ability to listen. You need to understand the background and culture of your counterparty. Negotiations do not take place in vacuum, and negotiators are not robots. They have a culture, background, and disposition that you need to be very familiar with. The third one, and my most favorite, you need to know when to be tough and when to compromise and when to say no with a smile. So yeah, there are a lot of pieces of advice that can be passed on to those who want to pursue a career in public diplomacy. But I think gaining respect of your counterparty by knowing their culture, their language, respecting their differences is key to success in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gerard. Excellent advice from both of you. Thank you. Our next question is, what was your journey to your current career in diplomacy? Ambassador Mlinar, you and I have some similarities there. We were both teachers before we became diplomats. How did you end up becoming a diplomat after being a teacher for 7 years, you said?
Yes, indeed, EJ, and like you, I was an English teacher. I was an ESL teacher in California, in LA, which to some people at that time was a bit surprising, but really, you teach English to college students in America? And I said, indeed, I teach ESL. I was teaching a little bit of Russian. But the important part of the experience was that I was able to connect all that with a lot of other experience, like participating in various Fulbright activities, but also trade fairs or various presentations, engaging with young people, in particular with other universities as well. And I mentioned already that I applied to the Foreign Service again after returning home from the Fulbright experience. And I started as a protocol officer and as an interpreter. So I was hired as an interpreter, and it took me some time to then transition into a full-fledged diplomatic position. And I have been really fortunate to have, in particular, two excellent types of experience, and that really is also a lot thanks to the Fulbright program. First with the UN, because this is the second time that I have served at the UN. First as a desk officer, as a diplomat and a deputy ambassador, and as you have mentioned earlier, since August 2017 as my country's ambassador to the UN. But also in Africa. And I would like to say that both these experiences have been truly defining for me. Why? It really has to do with the core of the Fulbright experience as well, and with the defining values, which I believe in. First, peace. And of course, here I mean not just the absence of war. And then three other P's that have characterized my work at the UN and in Africa, most importantly: people, participation, and partnerships. I firmly believe in them and pursue them on a daily basis. So this is really what has created the overall picture in my own career. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. I will share a quick story on my part. When I was a Fulbright English Teaching Assistant in Belgium, the Fulbright program was managed by the public diplomacy officer at the US Embassy in Brussels. And I remember meeting him and getting to know him and learning more about his career. I had never heard about the Foreign Service. I knew very little about diplomacy, to be honest. But I remember thinking to myself, wow, that is an amazing job. I want his job one day. And sure enough, I pursued the opportunity to become an American Foreign Service officer. And I've now had the great opportunity to manage the Fulbright program in 3 different countries. Ultimately, as Ambassador Pickering said in his opening comments, it's all about people-to-people diplomacy. And that's why I chose to be a public diplomacy officer. I think there are so many similarities between the work that Fulbright grantees do around the world and what I do as a public diplomacy officer. So moving on to the next question. what is your biggest takeaway from working in your field, and what keeps you excited to continue working in this field? So Kelly, we'll start with you.
Sure, and thank you. And that question, as you were reading it, the first thing that came to mind was that people are just so incredibly committed to this work, to this field. And very often we do a lot of the work behind the scenes and receive very little credit, but we're okay with that. We're happy to serve the public and to have a little part in making the world just a little bit better, a little bit safer. But one thing also that I have to say that keeps this job kind of appealing is that we never know what's going to happen day to day. Every day I come into work or I log on, I don't know what's going to be in my inbox. I don't know what's going to go on. And that is one thing that keeps me going. And in addition to being able to move around the world and learn a few languages in between and work on issues that I care about, that affect, the people in that country and the United States.
Thank you, Kelly. Dr. Gerard, what keeps you motivated and excited to do your work every day?
I think I will answer the first part, given that I'm a corporate lawyer now. But I'll tell you about my biggest takeaway from working in this field a few years ago. I think that public diplomacy widens one's horizons because it exposes you to the cultures and personalities of other people. It teaches you that there are no absolutes in life and that truth is relative, and there are many angles to one issue. This, I believe, brings a holistic look into life, and through public diplomacy, you become a more holistic person as you're exposed to other cultures and points of view. And this is a transferable skill that you carry with you wherever you go and whatever career you pursue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question we have is, how do you think everyday citizens can contribute to fostering people-to-people diplomacy in their communities? And we will all answer this question. We'll start with Ambassador Lunar.
Thanks very much, EJ. I would like to share a very personal story and experience. When I served in Kenya, I used to engage with the people, and specifically young people in disadvantaged communities and at universities. Of course, as a former teacher, that's something that I never hesitated to do. I dare to say that there was a signature initiative, which I called Ambassadors of Change, involving young Kenyans into bringing about change to their own communities, schools, and into their whole society. And I have to say that up till now, I'm very proud of many of them because they have achieved great results in their careers and in their lives. And it was often with very little, almost with nothing, that they started the journey. We equip them with additional knowledge and additional opportunities through our development cooperation program in their schools, in their secondary schools, high schools. And then we were able to engage with them at the embassy and at the United Nations office in Nairobi. And it did make a huge difference in many ways. They were able to address issues such as domestic violence, or drugs, or street crime, or even tribalism, and other pressing issues of their own communities through grassroots activism, through involving more and more young people, and also through writing into local newspapers about potential solutions. So this is just one but I think very interesting example of how ordinary people can really not only get engaged, but can make a huge difference and provide the necessary change. And of course, it very much relates also to the work that I do at the UN today, helping create opportunities for young people in particular, engaging with them, listening to them, but also learning from them and even mentoring them, the generation of today and not only of tomorrow. Thanks.
Thank you, Ambassador. Dr. Gerard?
Sure. So I think everyday citizens can give a window to the culture and values they have in that culture. And a successful diplomat can, through the lives of everyday citizens, get a glimpse on how people think, how they operate, what values they have. And interacting with everyday citizens can enhance one's understanding of a specific culture and learn how to deal with it more effectively. I also think that people-to-people diplomacy is a very effective tool in influencing public opinion. It has the ability of establishing links within the civil society beyond conventional opinion gatekeepers. And with that, you foster understanding, genuine understanding between nations and people of those nations.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gerard. Kelly?
So, I mean, first I would say just be open and be respectful to people that don't look like you or think like you or move through the world in the same way that you do. But also, when I think of kind of contributing or fostering like people-to-people diplomacy, I enjoy food. I love food. So I always think about how can food bring people together. So, you know, for example, you could organize a dinner, you know, with food from a different culture that you're not familiar with, or, you know, just trying new recipes or going to a cooking class. So you see, there's a bit of a theme, but also just offering to host exchange students or, you know, kind of be, you know, I don't know if they still do this, but like a buddy to exchange students that are new to your country, new to your area, and helping them, you know, get acclimated to their new environment. And I know during the pandemic, there were these virtual city tours, and I saw a lot of it for European countries. And that's just yet another way to kind of feed that interest and kind of also foster those people-to-people interactions. And of course, connecting with your local university, your local schools, and to reach out to them.
Thank you, Kelly. All excellent advice. I was going to add host an exchange student, right? One of my earliest experiences growing up in a very small town in rural Western New York State was hosting an exchange student from the Slovak Republic. And I got to know him and his family quite well. And today we've remained in contact. And so there are plenty of opportunities around you, no matter where you are, to try and foster more people-to-people understanding and diplomacy. So thank you very much. The next question we have is, what motivated you to join the Foreign Service, and what has been your most impactful experience as a Foreign Service officer to date? And this question will be for Kelly and me. Go ahead, Kelly.
Thanks. So I think my motivation stems largely just from my upbringing. My mother actually recently retired from after 30 years of federal government service. My dad was in the Air Force Reserves, and he also works for the federal government as well. So it's really natural for me to look for a career in public service and then combine that with my interest in languages and cultures. It's just the Foreign Service was absolutely the perfect fit. And in terms of impactful experience as an FSO, I think it's really hard to narrow it down, honestly. I mean, I think things, you know, just being able to connect to people and talk to people from that have different perspectives, or sometimes have the same perspective, whether that's students or activists or NGOs or politicians, that has really been important to me, and I really appreciated that throughout my career. But also doing things like, you know, going to Greenland twice for work. Like, who gets to go to Greenland twice for work? But then also doing other things like fostering these people-to-people connections by organizing English language classes for those whose first language is not English, or Danish and Greenlandic classes for my colleagues in Denmark. So it's hard to choose one thing that was impactful. So if I can, I say everything.
I agree with you, Kelly. It is tough to choose one thing that I would say is most impactful, although I must admit it, not just for the sake of this panel, my work that I've done managing the Fulbright program now in 3 different countries, as well as my own personal Fulbright experience, really I consider to be incredibly impactful. Building and establishing those people-to-people relationships across the spectrum, as Dr. Gerard said earlier, across a very diverse spectrum of academic disciplines and ethnic backgrounds of participants and regional differences, et cetera, has just been phenomenal. Just very quick, I spent time in both Bolivia and South Africa, really trying to reach underrepresented audiences in the Fulbright program to encourage folks to apply for Fulbrights. Unfortunately, I would say in some countries, there's this idea that Fulbright is very elitist and only the elite of the elite could potentially participate in the Fulbright program. That is just not true. There are so many wonderful examples. In Bolivia and South Africa, we really reached out to universities and communities that had been traditionally underrepresented in the Fulbright program. And I was so proud to send people on the Fulbright program to study and do research and teach in the United States that maybe a few years prior had not thought that it would have been possible for them. So just a quick example there of how I think the Fulbright program has been very impactful and how I've been proud to be a part of it. So moving along, we will now invite a selection of audience questions. So if you would please specify if your question should be directed to a specific panelist or to all of the panelists. We may not be able to get to all of the questions today, and we do appreciate your understanding in advance. So please go ahead and submit your questions if you haven't already, and specify if you would like one particular panelist to answer the question or if you would like all of the panelists to answer the question. Thank you.
Great. So it looks like we have some questions that are coming in, and let's start with a general question which can be addressed by everyone in the panel. The first question is, what do you see for the future of the Fulbright program, and where do you see Fulbright going in the next 75 years?
I can take that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I can see the Fulbright program going from one strength to another. But in the next 75 years, you will have another batch of people exposed to more cultures and disciplines and education. And you would only hope that that level of interaction would further people's understanding and respect of basic human rights. And hopefully that would push countries to do the right thing and move forward in development and growth.
Thank you. Ambassador Mlinar, any thoughts there?
Yes, thanks very much. I very much agree with what has already been said. Indeed, we need to make sure that we are up to speed with the developments that we have with globalization, with artificial intelligence potentially, with information flow and other major developments. We have seen during the pandemic how much and how quickly we had to adjust to the virtual tools. And I think there are important lessons learned there for us, also for the future of cultural exchange and international understanding programs, including the Fulbright program, obviously. We need to protect and promote its basic values, but maybe there are ways how to expand through the virtual tools and how to involve even more people in it without necessarily increasing the budgets, which is not easy, or without necessarily having more people travel and go to places. It would be, of course, great, but it's not always possible. But I think there should be probably one of the immediate and automatic tasks for any Fulbright participant during his time or her time, whether it's a year or shorter or longer, to involve as many others from the same fields through virtual events, or of course other events, in particular to involve the disadvantaged, whether it is the youth or women and girls, and with that to carry further the Fulbright flag into the future. Thanks. And universities, of course, that was already mentioned. We should try to involve universities in particular, but also other education institutions even more. I mean, in the sense of reaching out to the wider student population. Thanks.
Thank you, Ambassador. Kelly?
I mean, I echo everything my fellow panelists have said, and I have nothing to add. Exactly that.
I agree completely. I would just say that we've had 400,000 participants in the Fulbright program in the first 75 years. Let's aim for at least 1 million by the next 75 years. William, over to you for the next question.
Sure. So we have another audience question that sort of connects with this topic, I think, that the ambassador was talking about the effects of technology on in-person exchanges or virtual exchanges like Fulbright. So this can be for all of the panelists. How do you think the increased connectivity and technological advancements that we have today will help or maybe, challenge in-person exchanges like Fulbright?
Ambassador, would you like to start with that one?
Yes. Thanks. Thanks very much. Well, like in foreign service or in the United Nations, if you will, we are trying to see how to update our toolbox in one way or another. How to be better prepared for the challenges and for the future. And of course, it's a multi-dimensional task, which requires from all of us more flexibility, more openness, more engagement. And this is exactly what the Fulbright program also stands for in terms of its basic values. So I would really like to see that we use the Fulbright program as an excellent example of how these things can work even better, because promoting cultural or also inter-religious dialogue, learning, communication is something which we should not take for granted in today's world, even more than before. And of course, the United States, through the Fulbright program, has been really leading by example in many ways. I think we need to also expand to regions such as Africa in particular. Maybe we can foster some even stronger partnerships, let's say with the African Union, or with actors such as ASEAN or ECOWAS, some of the regional and sub-regional organizations, of course, NGO community, civil society. So these partnerships, I think, can be crucial, and they would allow us to expand, again, without necessarily having the challenge of budgets or other constraints, which we cannot always influence. Thanks.
Dr. Girar, any thoughts on this? Or Kelly, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just a few additional thoughts. I agree with the ambassador. There are opportunities to reach more people and to make more connections, and also just promote that flexibility that we all have seen now with having the option for these virtual engagements. But I also think about potential challenges, which one could be just really showing just how deep the digital divide is in some parts of the world. But that doesn't have to be somewhere where we stop. It could also spur innovation to address some of those challenges. And I think Fulbright can really be at the forefront of that as well. Thanks.
Dr. Gerard?
Yeah, I totally agree with my fellow panelists. I think that the use of technology will only enhance the program, and it will serve as a catalyst to reach to a broader spectrum of people and to deeper pockets. But at the same time, technology or public diplomacy has its own imperfections if it's exercised by inexperienced people. At the end of the day, diplomacy is a profession. It's a well-known field of international relations. So there's a fine line between using technology to advance unprofessional objectives and turn it into some sort of a propaganda. So that's something, while the use of technology is very helpful, we need to be very careful about how it's used and by whom it's used.
I agree completely. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you, Dr. Gerard. I think that technology definitely presents opportunities, but also perhaps some challenges, and we need to be aware of both. I would argue that while there are technological advances that can make our international communications definitely much easier, there is still no substitute, in my opinion, for really spending time and immersing yourself in a foreign culture to truly understand other people around the world. You can only learn just so much over this Zoom meeting, but if I were to go and live in Jordan for 3 years, I would certainly have a much, much better understanding for the culture and the people and the society of Jordan. So thank you very much. William, next question.
Sure. So we have a question that is directed to Kelly about the Foreign Service Officer experience. And it is, how do you adapt to a new country when you begin a new foreign service post? What actions do you take at first to get to know the people, their customs, especially when that country has maybe a very different culture from yours? In Kelly's case, that might be Malaysia.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I think that kind of preparation and trying to learn about a culture starts way before I even get to a country. I do my research online. I talk to people, if I'm in the US, I'll talk to people in the US or wherever I am to, just try to get a better understanding of the realities of on the ground. But as EJ said, there is no substitute for, that person-to-person, face-to-face interaction. So, when I do get to that country, I just talk to people. That's what diplomats do, right? We talk and we learn and we exchange ideas and information. And, I don't go into a country expecting to become, a quote unquote expert, 2 days after I arrive, or even after, 2 or 3 years of living there. But I do try to, put myself out there. And sometimes that's just a matter of, going to the grocery store, which can be really daunting, I think. And EJ's shaking his head, that can be really daunting the first couple of times you do that in a new country. But really just reaching out and saying, I don't know much about this culture, but I want to learn. And then just going from there, honestly.
Next question.
Great. So we have another audience question for Dr. Gerard. And the question is, what was your experience like coming back to the US as a diplomat versus as a Fulbrighter? Were there any differences? Were there any similarities? How was that experience?
Thank you. So I'm currently based in Dubai. So my Fulbright experience followed my foreign service experience. As I said early on, I applied 3 times for the Fulbright, and at a young age, I wanted international exposure. I was looking for ways to get that exposure, And I was really fascinated by the US. And the trigger for my interest, unfortunately, was on the back of the September 11 attacks, that I really wanted to reach out, to come to the US, to get to know the people, to let the people know me. At the end of the day, I'm an Arab woman who come from the Middle East. I wanted to take part in changing perceptions and stop perceptions from becoming more negative than they were. So I applied for the Foreign Service, and I was lucky from the first time. So third was not a charm for me on that front. And I applied, I went through the regular process, and then joined the Diplomatic Institute, went back to the Foreign Ministry, and then got posted to the embassy in Washington, D.C. And when I started my post there, I wanted to immerse myself in the culture, and I did. I lived the American experience to its best and pursued my education. Living in Washington, D.C. is in itself a fantastic experience, where you get the college life experience, all of the think tanks, the government. You would walk in to Congress back in the day. And so yeah, it was a fantastic experience. And then I got the Fulbright scholarship, which was for 2 years, and I went into Georgetown. It took me 4 years to complete my doctorate degree. And when I graduated in 2010, it was on the back of the financial crisis. So I didn't know what exactly to do. And the natural thing to do was to go back to the Middle East and try to build on the skills and the experience that I've acquired during the time I lived, worked, and studied in the US. And here I am, 11 years forward, practicing law with a US firm, but I'm based in Dubai, so I haven't been back. I've visited. I have a lot of friends and family there, but I haven't worked since I left the embassy in Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Dr. Gerard. William, next question.
Sure. We have a question for the ambassador. And the question is, what are the top 3 qualities that you believe make an ideal ambassador?
Thanks very much. That's a very interesting one and a tricky one. I would not necessarily say qualities of an ambassador. I would enlarge it to qualities of a good diplomat, and of course, the ambassador is the highest level of the diplomatic career. I would start with, and of course, I'm sure colleagues of mine who know me well would relate to that because they have heard me telling them the same. First, diligence. We really have to be going into details, analyzing connections, or analyzing the information that we get into every detail, because today's world is complicated, and it is not always what you see at the first sight that is really the final picture, so to say. So diligence in thinking, in analyzing, in engaging is critical more than ever. Secondly, being humble, staying humble, or staying selfless, precisely because there are good reasons for the diplomatic service to be called, or the foreign service to be called, service. And I always say it needs to be service with capital S. And of course, it doesn't work without being selfless and humble about that. And last but not least, empathy and solidarity. We are engaging with other diplomats, whether now through virtual channels, hopefully soon enough in a full-fledged manner, more and more also in person, over a cup of coffee or in real discussions about also some of the sensitive issues. And it simply doesn't work without the solidarity and the empathy with the people that constitute the core of our work. If we lose the perspective of who we work for and who we are trying to where we are trying to improve lives, then it doesn't make much sense. So these are some of the elements that I would put emphasis on. Thanks.
Thank you, Ambassador. William, next question.
Sure. So this is an audience question that can go to all of our panelists. And basically the question is, what is your favorite memory from your Fulbright experience?
I'm happy to go first on that one and let some others think about that. I had so many wonderful experiences during my year in Belgium that it is difficult to choose, but one that really stands out for me is the Fulbright Alumni Association in Belgium, which was made up primarily of Belgians who had gone to the United States to study and teach and do research. That association was very active, and they welcomed us new Fulbright grantees, American Fulbright grantees in Belgium. They welcomed us with open arms, and they were very active. And at least once a month, we were invited to various places to meet with them and engage with them. And these were very interesting people. I remember one was the Speaker of the Belgian Parliament. One was a mayor in a small town. One was a leading researcher, a scientist at a university. And it was just so wonderful for me as an American Fulbright grantee in Belgium to meet these people and get to travel around Belgium and discover the country and discover the wonderful people. So that for me is probably one of my happiest memories as a Fulbright grantee in Belgium. Dr. Gerard, how about you?
Well, my Fulbright experience was 2 years out of 4 years of college life. And when I look back at my life as a student, it's something that I miss a lot. I miss the people. I miss my professors, faculty, the interaction on campus. It was absolutely a wonderful experience having to go back to college after a few years. I did my bachelor and LLM when I was much younger. So when I had the opportunity, which was given to me by Fulbright, to go back and live the student life, it was absolutely wonderful. And studying law in the US also has its advantages, because you walk into a classroom, unlike other countries or systems where kids go into college right from high school. Law students in the US they come with an undergrad. Most of them have government experience. So the level of interaction and engagement and the discussions that you have in the classroom and on campus is unparalleled. So I think the whole experience, student experience that was made available to me because of Fulbright is something that I truly admire.
Thank you, Dr. Gerard. Kelly?
Yeah, once again, it's hard to choose one. So I'm going to have to say two different ones. One, because I was an English teacher when I was there, and I had one student who would always come with another student who spoke English very well to kind of translate for her. And so at the start of my program, they always came together. But as we got closer and closer to the end, the student whose English communication skills weren't great, she started coming by herself. and just talking to me and having a conversation. And, you know, as a teacher, that's what you want to see. You want to see that growth and, you know, that comfort increase in your students. So that was really that was a great impact, great experience for me. But also just kind of on the fun side of, you know, being a teacher is I painted a mural at the school where I was working. And I mean, that in and of itself is fun, but then it started pouring down raining, as it often does in Terengganu, Malaysia, and we just decided to dance in the rain. So those are like what some of my fondest memories of being in Malaysia as a Fulbright English teacher.
Thank you. What a fantastic memory. Ambassador?
Thanks very much. For me, the most important thing that stands out when I think back is the community, the Fulbright community that we were. There was about 15 of us at that time, and we were organizing excellent trips together, outings, you know, in the Los Angeles area. We were having barbecues and sharing a lot, and I think that's one of the critical components of the Fulbright experience, that we don't only learn from our U.S. host institutions, but also we learn from one another, and we were able to immediately apply some of the practical experience that others had. You know, sometimes it's also good to avoid other people's mistakes and you know, do things like that. But also community and the level of interest that I have experienced at my host institution, the LA Harbor College, but also at UCLA itself, where people really wanted to learn, to listen, and that was a powerful driver for me to participate further in the activities. And of course, on the fun side, there were Halloween parties, or there were cooking contests. I won the cooking contest with a Slovak goulash, the beef stew. My mom had to send me the recipe, of course. So there is a lot that really defines the Fulbright experience.
I look forward to tasting that goulash one day, Ambassador. Congratulations. William?
Okay, so I think we have time for one more question. And this was addressed to the ambassador, but I think it's something that can apply to anyone who's taught previously or worked with children. So thinking about sort of the next generation and future of international exchange, what do you think are some important ways to teach young students and children and other people to explore other countries, other cultures, ways for them to get out of their community or comfort zone and learn more about the world?
Thanks very much. As a linguist and as a former language teacher, of course, I would start with the language part, because language often is the gateway, the door to other cultures, to other people's lives, to history and other things. I think we need to do better on language learning in general. Despite the various technological solutions that we have at our disposal, and we need to motivate young people to be interested in learning language and culture, of course, in practical ways. Hopefully, also they can see it through us, through Fulbrighters, that we have been able to benefit tremendously from doing just that. Then, of course, through teaching them mutual understanding and tolerance, we can expand their horizons, or we can motivate them to look at their neighbor often also, not only at other countries, at their neighbor who may be different because they come from a different country or from a different background, socially or in terms of religion or other areas. That's another important thing. Lastly, probably involving the learners directly into the learning process, into finding out themselves about certain things, because obviously, we cannot spoon feed anybody anymore, especially in the era of digital technology and social media and all that. Our young people know so much. My 13-year-old daughter every day surprises us with knowledge that she has just gotten through reading or listening, looking up information, but we cannot leave them out on their own. We have to talk to them, communicate to them, and challenge them to maybe go deeper or find more, and of course guide them what is good, what needs to be further expanded, and maybe where there are areas which can be dangerous. And then I mentioned Africa several times already today. I really dare to say that those kids, school children in Africa, they are hungry for information, for knowledge. They don't often have the opportunities, and often there is so little that we can do in order to increase those opportunities and make a huge difference. We have the increasing numbers of young people. We have 1.8 billion young people on the planet today, and there are millions who unfortunately are left behind in one way or another. So we need to do better, and often just small contributions are making a huge difference. Thanks.
Thank you, Ambassador. Kelly, as a former teacher, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I echo everything the ambassador said, but also, just encouraging students and people in general to be inquisitive and not to just accept things at the surface level, I think is one thing that we could do, but also, and kind of reflecting on my educational career, just being introduced to other cultures and foods, but also constantly reiterating like the need to learn about other cultures, other food, and how that's going to make me a better person, make me a better global citizen. Because sometimes I think we talk about, languages or culture or different things in a vacuum, and students aren't able to see how it's going to apply to their lives going forward. So just making those connections for students, I think is really important. And again, I love food, so I'm always going to plug in food and encourage people to, that's the gateway. And for me, especially, that's the gateway.
I agree completely. Thank you. Dr. Gerard, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think public diplomacy is a fantastic area. I think if you have the opportunity to pursue a career or any of the objectives of public diplomacy, go for it. Be persistent, be determined to the extent you can, get rid of anyone or anything that stands in the way of your success. Immerse yourself in the experience and in the culture, and then opportunities become endless, really. It expands your horizons, your network, your contacts, and it is a rewarding area where you get the satisfaction out of connecting with people and learning from them on the way.
Thank you, Dr. Gerard. So before we close, I'd like to offer each panelist an opportunity to share a final thought about maybe something we discussed today or something we haven't yet that you'd like to share. Dr. Gerard, can we start with you?
I think I said a lot today. My admiration and fascination with the Fulbright program and the opportunities. It's a gateway to a very rewarding career, regardless of the field that you decide to pursue. So good luck for those who manage the program. I hope it continues to go from one strings to another. For those who would like to further their education and seek international exposure, go for it, be persistent, don't take no for an answer. Try once, twice, thrice, don't quit until you get it. And the organizers and the people who run the Fulbright program, at the end of the day, you make your case to them, and you need to convince them about your commitment and determination in making a difference in your community and hopefully in the world.
Thank you very much. Kelly, any final thoughts?
Yeah, just, I think, celebrating 75 years of the Fulbright program, I think is an incredible accomplishment. And, I really hope that 75 years from now that, my grandchildren are having this conversation, with fellow Fulbrighters, because this program is just that impactful. It was life-changing for me. I know it's going to be life-changing for everyone on this call and everyone that's looking to become a Fulbrighter. So just, if you are already a Fulbrighter, also just take advantage of these opportunities right now, but also pay it forward. So when you go back home, wherever that may be, like, spread the good news and share your experiences with those around you, because I think that's, what public diplomacy does. It tells everyone all the good things. So congratulations to Fulbright.
Thank you, Kelly. Ambassador Mlinar.
Thanks very much, EJ. Indeed, I think we all stand firmly behind the work and the principles of the program, of the Fulbright program at 75. It is paramount to continue fostering experience sharing and allowing for the free flow of ideas and opinions. Only then we can start truly understanding the minds of our culturally diverse world, which will then enable us to look into these issues we need to overcome, or the challenges that we need to address. Let me also say that, in fact, the Fulbright program was born here during the Cold War, and that's not an unimportant aspect. And I myself would have never benefited from the program if there hadn't been for the important political changes in the late 1980s and early 1990s. I grew up in a communist country, and I was 19 when the changes happened. Maybe after the early 90s, for a while, we thought that it kind of already served its purpose and that it was no longer necessary. But in fact, it is still really important and really necessary. And for me, it's really a token of mutual understanding, of sharing, of global understanding and global education. And let's promote it in that way. It was, of course, visionary from Senator Fulbright to push it despite the challenges that the world or the bipolar system was facing at that time. Today, we don't have a bipolar. We maybe have a multipolar. But what we need to avoid is vacuum, or we need to avoid situations of no governance or of no control over what we do and how we live in societies and in the world. So I would really like to see the Fulbright program play a special role in this aspect. It has the legacy, it has the tools, and of course we are there to provide the testimonies, if you will, and we are there to continue pushing it. And as Kelly said, let's hope that our grandchildren will have an opportunity similar to this one to discuss just that and to celebrate the 150th anniversary of it. Thanks very much. This was a great event. Chapeau, Fulbright and EJ. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. We will now bring this panel to a close, but first I would like to thank our wonderful panelists who have taken time out of their busy schedules doing truly incredible work to share their stories with us. On behalf of the Fulbright Program and the State Department's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, we thank you very much. We hope you all found today discussing and connecting with your international colleagues to be enjoyable. We'd also like to thank all of you who participated as audience members and listened to this Fulbright Impact in the Field panel. To learn about our next panels and other Fulbright 75th anniversary events, please sign up to receive our monthly newsletters. You can also sign up on the anniversary website, which again is fulbright75.org, by scrolling down the page to the newsletter to sign up at the bottom. Again, thank you panelists, thank you audience. Happy 75th anniversary, Fulbright.